explain with more legal lifetime experiences. So it's about the conversion or transferring of property, such that such property is from, properties derived from any offenses for the purpose of concealing or disguising the illicit origin of the property, or of assisting any person who is involved in such offenses to evade the legal consequences of its actions. So as we can see, and I will show you in the pictures in the presentation, this is the first convention that we can refer when it comes to the money laundering, and it's about the legal definition. But we also have a United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crimes, which is mostly also, it has its protocols, which talks about human trafficking, armed trafficking, as a part of it. So that's why, since the money coming from any of these transnational organized crimes need to be cleaned at some point, the main United Nations conventions regulating the transnational organized crimes refer money laundering and asking for cooperation and requiring state parties to criminalize money laundering processes in their countries, because otherwise having a regulation which talks about the human trafficking, armed trafficking will not be beneficial if we cannot stop the money comes from these illicit crimes. So this is the original article from the CTOC. I'm not going to go into details, but Article 6 talk about criminalization. And as I mentioned before, if you are a state party, then you have to make this crime as a crime in your own national legal system. So United Nations is just giving a regular general idea about what should be criminalized. And also same conventions talks about coming together about detection, prosecution, because any of these crimes, human trafficking, armed trafficking, drug trafficking, they are transnational. So it can happen in Canada, but it may affect Brazil. So it may happen in Poland, and then it may affect Iran. So somehow, because of the borders and it's a transnational origin, so it has to affect more than one countries. That's why it's also suggesting cooperation, because otherwise it's really hard to fight with these criminals. So there are 3 stages of money laundering. Of course, there are more stages and it's a complicated situation. So we cannot just say it's just only 3 stages. It makes it easy. Of course, it will make so easy to detect and see what's happening to prevent from it. So that's why we cannot say only 3 stages, it's clear. But what we can say as a lawyer or as a legal scholar, we can talk about 3 stages to catch these money laundering issues. So first one will be placement. Second one will be layering. Third one will be integration. So when we talk about the placement, we are talking about the money that we received from, sorry, my screen is, okay, that we received from the money. We have, let's say, the criminals who gain money from human trafficking has a $1 million to clean. So they have the money, initial money from an illegal business. So it is a placement stage, moving the funds from direct association with the crime. So we are I would like to show some pictures to make it more clear, because it sounds more complicated and it sounds very close to each other. So placement, layering, and integration. So there is an accumulation of the money from illegal activities. As we said, criminals have $1 million that earned from human trafficking. So of course, you cannot go to any bank or any legal system and try to place this money into the bank. So of course, there will be alarms, and anti-money laundering systems will also somehow give the red flag. The banking system, every legal system will give some kind of red flag. So that's why they have to make sure they are placing in a more legal-looking way. So then layering procedures are placing the money into a financial system, then transferring the money to hide the origins of funds, and then returning the money for the money, like as if they bought a house or car, luxury things. So I would like to talk about the first placement stage now. So as you can see, we have a dirty money, which comes from a crime. And then it needs to be placed into bank to be able to layer to somewhere and integrate the system all over again to make it like clean money. So that's why we are talking about the initial stage of the entering dirty cash into financial system. They have to put the money into circulation. So that's why, as I mentioned at the beginning, $1 million is not easy amount of money to put into financial system, including the bank. So that's why most of the time large amounts money needs to be broken into smaller amounts to multiple financial institutions. For example, as many of you be aware of that, like less than 10,000 euro or less than 10,000 US dollar will not raise a red flag among the system. So there are some small groups of people, we can call them as Smurf, this is how they are called. They can kinda give all of this money into many people so they can put into system. That's one way, but if you have a great amount of money, it will be more harder. So it represents the initial entry to the financial system. But also money launderers, criminals are most vulnerable for the system at this stage because you literally have a huge amount of money and you are trying to put into system. So it bears a great vulnerability for the criminals. So, but how people does it? There are some kind of ideas how it happens in the past. As I mentioned before, Smurfs are the people who can put small amount of money into the system. So it can be possible looking like they are paying their loan back or gambling. If it's legal these countries, they can go play the gamble, give the money, get the chips. So it can be another way used for the criminal in the past according to the different court cases. So currency smuggling from US dollar, Mexican peso, and then they can turn into euro, changing. The most important part is that separating the initial process and making the confuse banks or legal systems by doing many different deposits. So, or currency exchanges, as we mentioned that if smuggling can be like they may have a box of US dollar or bag of US dollar, so they may try to smuggle this money from Mexican border through US border. But same currency exchanges, buying, changing in the system all the time will confuse the system. And then there is a blending funds. There is also another term. Normally we are talking about how to clean dirty money, but normally there is another system. Technically, you make your clean money dirtier. How it is possible? Because at some point, these criminals have to mingle their two sources of income. Which one is legal, which one is illegal? So they can try to mingle those both incomes in one funding system, so it will blend. So technically, your dirty money will be cleaned and your clean money will be get dirty. So that's the system. And second one, the layering stage of money laundering. So now somehow it's in the financial system, but we are talking about like how we can blend these illicit funds in with legitimate funds, as I mentioned, like kind of mingling them together. Funds are then cycled through various bank accounts or numerous small transactions at legitimate businesses such as casinos or the stock markets, depending on the country we are talking about. So the layering stage of money laundering, The most complex stage is this one now. Launderers were more vulnerable in the first stage, but now we are talking about this one is more complicated because then now they have to make the money as hard as possible to detect. So illicit money is blended with legitimate money now. Now there is a constant motion, as I mentioned. One bank account has some part of the money, and then it will transfer to the Mexico, and then they will use different people from different countries. That's why this is how they can somehow launder the money. And primary purposes, as I mentioned before, again, separate the illicit money from its source. So they got the money from human trafficking, $1 million. Now we are at the stage they are trying to confuse the whole system to not to be detected by the where money comes from. So that's why it requires a sophisticated process involving layering financial transaction and kind of break the link between the human trafficking and the $1 million. So we are trying to make them look like they have no connection. So again, layering methods, again, gambling in a casino, depending on the country, or placing cash into stock market. So they can play around the stock market and by putting different financial products, buying one stock one day, which is not risky stocks, of course, then reselling them, buying another one. So use this money in these jurisdictions. Do not cooperate in anti-money laundering investigations. So there are some countries, they would like to keep more privacy when it comes to their customers. So they do not, as a state, if state X asks for an information about that criminal, the bank or the government of that state might refuse to cooperate because they don't have to under their own jurisdiction. So that's another way to do it. Transfers as payments for goods or services, thus giving them a legitimate appearance. For example, for the restaurant, of course, there will be other crimes involved. Receipts might be recreated. So they may say every day they earn 2,000 US dollar, but it might not be reality. So unless personally you are auditing them, unless they are under a serious investigation, it's hard to know which restaurant or which beauty center or which place has the real receipts. So it's easy to use some legitimate businesses to hide the funding, where the money comes from. So layering is typically one of the safer stages when you compare with the first one, as I said, that in this one it's more complicated, but they are less vulnerable. And the last stage is that integration stage of the money laundering. So we had the placement, we had the layering. Now somehow criminals have to integrate their money. They had the criminal money, but they already found a system to put into banks. And then in the layering stage, they started to buy different stocks, do different activities on multiple people's accounts. So now it's the time to integrate this money, because they already confused the system. Banking systems or government systems didn't give a red flag. But now they need to do integration because money is at some point in stock, bank. So now they are going to buy either other stocks, housing, or like very, very expensive art pieces is another way to do it. And or like $1 million watch, they can buy it, and then later it's possible to sell it and put into the business as if it's a legal money. So now integration, the money is integrated into the world, real world, as a house, as a car, as a expensive art pieces, or as a kind of, as I mentioned, different stocks, but still it's sellable. It's movable, easily movable. So in here, of course, when they have a piece of art or a very expensive watch, now money returned to the perpetrator somehow. It's fully integrated into financial system. They were successfully put the money without raising any red flag. of any kind of system, banking, financial institutions. Now, they purchase the property, they purchase the artwork, jewelry, or high-end automobiles to make sure nobody will realize where the money comes from. Now they have a $500,000 artwork in their houses, and 1 year later from today, they can turn into money if they need it. So when they sell this artwork, of course, the money and the check they will receive, which will shows that they are literally getting the selling their artwork and getting the money from the business they already sold. So receipt and everything will be real. So technically, this is how clean their money after all three procedures. I think I am done with my time.
Professor Avcı, keep going to summarize, like, your topic. You have like the...
No, do I have time? No,
yeah,
no.
keep going. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I thought it's until 40, so I didn't want to take
Don't
anyone
worry about
else's time. Okay, thank you. So the main idea, as I mentioned, that under the international law and under the transnational organized crimes, we have other organized crimes governed by these CTOC and Vienna Convention. But the problem in here, human trafficking, art trafficking, drug trafficking are separate crimes, so they are already punishable by different national criminal codes as well, in accordance with some United Nations conventions. In here, we are trying to clean we are trying to show how criminals will clean the money that they earn from one of these illegal activities. So that's why, even though it's a complicated system, we already mentioned about the 3 stages, that what they did and how they were going to do it. So as we said, that the main idea is kind of separating. The money is coming from a crime, turns into an expensive car. So that's why if there are famous drug trafficking, there are some cases in Mexico, in US, like narco trafficking issues. So of course, money coming from these group of criminals are huge. So it's not an easy 3-stage situation to explain, okay, we have the placement, now we do this. But technically, what we are talking about, that if it is easy to detect that, that's why most of the banks are also have to comply with these anti-money laundering laws around the world. And most of these regulations, including the United States, they are very suitable with the United Nations Convention, because, as you may know, many drug trafficking or human trafficking is also going through their border as well. So, but still, it's important to be aware of it, because every day, like, it's billion dollars money coming from a criminal activity. So stopping the drug trafficking, for example, is the one point, but then you also have to make sure the money they earned, because it will produce more crime, more drug trafficking, more human trafficking, more armed trafficking. So we have to make sure this money shouldn't go into the system at some point in the hands of the criminals. That's why around the world, under the international law as well as a transnational crime, there are different regulations, and each country has tried to actually keep up with the anti-money laundering laws all around the world. So if there's any question, I can take that.
Any questions, comments? Professor Avcı, thank you so much for your great presentation. Actually, it was like just give me a minute, please. Okay.
Sure.
It was like an eye-opening presentation for me to see what was going on. Like, you was like telling us, she was summarizing us actually the basic concept of the money laundering, like including the definition, the methods, as a cyber lawyer, one of our biggest challenges based on the jurisdiction. Most of the time, the question comes like when I teach those type of like the subjects to my students, and then the question comes how we are gonna trace like those like the criminals. Like as I understand that the international cooperation is somehow like the very crucial, right? But the question is like we also have the AI technology right now. Like, did you get any chance, like, or would you like to, do you mind to talk a little bit like how AI is gonna affect those like the money laundering issues? Is the thing kind of getting worse? Like, what is your opinion on that? Like right now we have more opportunities, right? What do you
To
think?
detect. Yeah, so
Right.
the thing is that online activities and online enhancements always a plus and cons, unfortunately, pros and cons. Because, like for example, Bitcoin, then it makes it hard to detect for governments because it was a new thing, and then it was so easy for criminals to just change their money and then put somewhere that no one can know about it until many years. So then with the IA and everything, even though, of course, like AI might be trained to detect some of the links. Like, let's say one country X in Latin America, let's say, and then if there is a regular movement from the same city in that country. So if it's known with like drug trafficking, so probably you can train the artificial intelligence to detect where the money comes from. And if it's because the problem with that, as I mentioned, in Europe, it's like it's as long as it's less than 10,000, it's not gonna raise the banking system. It's not gonna give the red flag. And the same for US 10,000. So of course it will help, but the problem is that also criminals can find the solutions, and
It
it's
could be
also,
creating more opportunities,
yeah,
right? As
it
well.
can give them more ideas as well, as if happens all the time when we have something new. So that's why it has advantages and disadvantages. So when you try to more empower the legal side, but also criminals will empower their side. So but at the beginning, since governments are more powerful at this point to create new laws or new detection, it might help to detect with some kind of patterns, like the famous places with drug trafficking or armed trafficking common routes, because United Nations is also releasing that kind of information on their website to see where, let's say, what's the common route from X country through Y country. So you can see and track where the crime starts and where the crime ends. So this can give the artificial intelligence, or however they gather the information, it can help them to create this link, and system might give a second chance to a human being, because it will be also problematic if we hand it through only the machines. So it may give another red flag and raise the question to people working at the anti-money laundering laws at their government or their banking system, because there are many legal analysts and money laundering analysts are working with different kind of computer systems which will give the red flag. But of course it might be just a wrong idea. It might be just false red flag. So, but I believe it will really help it as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. And next person, please. And we have an Uzbek lecturer whose name is Nizamettin Kazumov. He's gonna talk about the rise of startups leveraging the legal privileges to transform Uzbekistan business environment ecosystem. Yes, sir. You have 15 minutes.
Professor Carter, I'm sorry to disturb you. I wanted to say that unfortunately, Mr. Nizamuddin Kazimov and Abdulaziz Abdurazokov, they cannot join us today due to examination responsibilities in Tashkent State Law
But Jawahir
University.
is here. Jawahir,
Yep.
He should be presenting his topic, electronic digital signature in Uzbekistan, the Uzbek perspective. and then
Yes,
or
sir.
Turkish, like the professors, like the professor Silahşor is going to talk about the new challenges in the Turkish tax system. Jawahir, you have 15 minutes, my friend. Yes, sir.
Selamun Aleyküm. İyi akşamlar Sayın Samet Bey, hocam, sayın hocalarımız. Teşekkür ederim. İzin verirseniz sunumumu Türkçe olarak gerçekleştirmek isterim.
Right.
Ben
Burada
Cevahir
ilk
Reşonkul
defa bir
Taşkın.
Özbek bir hocamız Türkçe bir sunum yapacak. Senin için izin vereceğiz. Normalde biz dil olarak İngilizce'de Mert hocam çok şeyiz. Ama senin Türkçen iyi
Tamam,
olduğu için bu imkanı alacaksın. Maya hocam siz
tamam,
paylaşımınızı durdurabilir misiniz size zahmet? Cevahir buyurun sizi dinliyoruz Türkçe.
tamam. Çok teşekkürler hocam. Ee, Ben kendimi tanıtmak isterim. Ben Cevahir Reşonkulov, Taşkent Devlet Hukuk Üniversitesi'nde Siber Hukuk Bölümü öğretim görevlisiyim. Benim sunum konusu konu elektronik dijital imza ve bilimsel belgelerin gerçekliğine ilişkindir. Yani Özbekistan sisteminde. Ee, Özbekistan Cumhuriyeti'nin elektronik dijital imza hakkında 12 Ekim 2022 tarihli ve 793 sayılı Özbekistan Cumhuriyeti'nin kanunu çerçevesinde bilimsel belgelerin elektronik ortamda hukuken geçerli şekilde resmileştirilmesi meselesini normatif ve uygulamaya dönük bir perspektiften ele almak istiyorum. Yani günümüzde bilimsel faaliyetlerin büyük ölçüde dijital ortama taşındığı görülmektedir. Akademik makaleler, araştırma raporları, uzman görüşleri, proje çıktıları ve tez ekleri artık çoğunlukla elektronik formatta hazırlanmakta, sunulmakta ve arşivlenmektedir. Ancak bu dijitalleşme süreci her zaman yeterli hukuki güven ve kanıt değeri ile desteklenememektedir. Tam bu noktada elektronik dijital imza kurumu bilimsel belgeler açısından kilit bir rol üstlenmektedir. Öncelikle elektronik dijital imza hakkında kanuna göre elektronik belge elektronik biçimde kaydedilmiş elektronik dijital imza ile tasdik edilmiş ve belgenin kimliğinin tespit edilmesine imkan veren e, zorunlu zorunlu unsurları içeren bilgidir. Bu tanım bilimsel belgelerin akademik makaleler, bilimsel teknik raporlar, uzman görüşleri ve araştırma belgeleri dahil elektronik belge olarak kabul e, edilmesine açık bir hukuki zemin oluşturmaktadır. Konumun en önemli hukuklarından biri elektronik dijital imzanın ıslak imza ile hukuki eşdeğerliği meselesini açık bir şartlarda bağlamasıdır. Buna göre bir elektronik belgedeki dijital imza aşağıdaki üç koşulun birlikte gerçekleşmesi halinde el yazısı ile atılan imza ile aynı hukuki sonucu doğrudur. Birincisi elektronik dijital imzanın doğruluğunun teyit edilmesi olmasıdır. İkincisi dijital imza sertifikasının doğrulama anında geçerli olması veya imzalanma anında geçerli olduğunu gösteren güvenilir delillerin mevcut bulunmasıdır. Üçüncüsü ise dijital imzanın sertifikada belirtilen kullanım amacına uygun olarak kullanılmış olmasıdır. Bu çerçevede bilimsel belgelerin bakımından özellikle imzalama zamanının tespiti büyük önem taşımaktadır. Kanun kayıt merkezlerinin sunduğu zaman damgası hizmetinin öngörmektedir. Zaman damgası belirli bir elektronik belgenin belirli bir tarihte ve saatte mevcut olduğunu kanıtlayan bir elektronik unsurdur. Akademik bağlamda bu mekanizma bir makalenin hangi tarihte tamamlandığının, bir araştırma raporunun hangi versiyonun geçerli olduğunun ve olası intihal veya öncelik uyuşmazlıklarında delil sunulmasının güvenilir bir aracıdır. Elektronik dijital imzanın güvenilir biçimde işlemesi yalnızca bireysel imzalama fiilinde değil, aynı zamanda güçlü bir kurumsal altyapıya dayanır. Kanun uyarınca akredite edilmiş ve Özbekistan'da yerleşik tüzel kişiler kayıt merkezi olarak faaliyet gösterebilir ve bu faaliyetler çoğunlukla sözleşmeye dayalı olarak yürütülür. Yetkili kamu otoritesi olarak belirlenen kurum ise standartların belirtilmesi, akreditasyon, dönem ve güvenilir üçüncü taraf hizmetlerinin organizasyonundan sorumludur. Bu yapı bilimsel belgelerin doğrulanabilirliği ve uzun vadeli hukuki geçerliliği açısından kritik öneme sahiptir. Ayrıca kanun elektronik dijital imza sistemlerinde bilgi güvenliği meselesine özel bir önem atfetmektedir. Elektronik imza araçlarının sertifikalandırılması ulusal standartlara uygunluk ve özellikle bulut tabanlı imza sistemlerinde en az iki faktörlü kimlik doğrulama zorunluluğu, akademik belgelerin güvenliliği doğrudan ilgilendirmektedir. Her araştırmacının kendi adına tahsis edilmiş kişisel dijital imzayı kullanması, sorumluluğun ve akademik e, dürüstlüğünün yani korunması bakımından vazgeçilmezdir. Bununla birlikte elektronik sertifikaların yaşam doğusu ve bilimsel belgeler açısından dikkate alınmalıdır. Sertifikanın askıya alınması, yenilenmesi veya iptali halleri ilgili kayıtların resmi sicile işlenmesinin ve sertifika sahibinin bilgilendirmesini gerektirir. Aksi halde yani sertifikanın geçerliliği konusunda doğabilecek belirsizlikler, imzalanmış bilimsel belgelerin hukuki değerini tartışmalı hale getirebilir. Uluslararası akademik işbirliği bağlamında ise kanun güvenilir üçüncü taraf hizmetlerini özellikle vurgulamaktadır. Bu hizmet elektronik imzanın belirli bir kişiye ait olduğunu doğrulanmasını, elektronik belgenin bütünlüğünü ve güvenilirliğinin korunmasını ve sinir ötesi bilgi alışverişinde belgeye hukuki geçerlilik kazandırılmasını amaçlamaktadır. Yabancı ülkelerde düzenlenen dijital sertifikaların tanınması da uluslararası anlaşmalar veya güvenilir üçüncü taraf mekanizmaları aracıyla e, aracılığıyla mümkün kılınmaktadır. Bu husus ortak hazırlı uluslararası yayınlar ve uluslararası araştırma projeleri bakımından son derece önemli. Sonuç olarak bilimsel belgelerin elektronik dijital imza ile resmileştirilmesi yalnızca teknik bir kolaylık değil, aynı zamanda akademik faaliyetlerin hukuki güvenliği sağlayan temel bir araçtır. Bu bağlamda üç temel öneri bulunmak isterim. İstiyorum. Yani birincisi her bilimsel belge için elektronik dijital imza ile onaylanmış tek ve nihai sürüm politikasının benimsemesi. İkincisi, üniversiteler ve araştırma kurumları bünyesinde elektronik imza süreçlerinin açıkça düzenleyen kurumsal iş akışlarının oluşturulması. Üçüncüsü ise bilgi güvenliği sertifika yönetimi ve denetim mekanizmalarının akademik iletişimin ayrılmaz bir parçası halinde getirilmesidir. Bu yaklaşım dijital çağda bilimsel üretimin hem hızını hem de hukuki güvenilirliğini en eş zamanlı olarak güçlendirecektir. Ee, Profesör Samet Hocam, şimdi benim konum bitti. Hepinize
Cevahir,
çok teşekkürlerini sunuyorum. Hepinize çok
teşekkür
teşekkürler.
ederiz sunumun için. Gayet başarılı bir sunumdu. Biz de
Çok teşekkür.
Özbekistan'daki gelişmeleri yakından takip etme şansı aldık ana dilimizde. Türkçülük tarafından dolayı biliyorsun, Türkçe bir sunum almak benim için de heyecan verici. Hocamıza sorusu olan var mı? Cevahir hocamıza. Şimdi teşekkür ediyoruz. Mert
Çok
hocam,
teşekkürler.
your turn. You also have 15 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Yes. It's already on the screen right now, sir.
Okay. Okay. Welcome, dear esteemed colleagues. It's my privilege to present you today a paper deals into Turkish tax system. Thank you in advance for your attention. My name is Mert Silahşor. I'm an assistant professor of tax law at Yıldırım Beyazıt University. My topic is new challenges and recent developments in Turkish tax system. As Turkey navigates its position in the global economy, the tax landscape is continuously evolving, presenting both challenges and opportunities for policymakers, businesses, and taxpayers. I will shed light on the key issues shaping the Turkish tax system, including recent legislative changes, emerging trends in tax administration, and the implications of international developments on Turkey's tax policies. And here we will see that digitalization is the most important factor for the tax developments also. My presentation flow, firstly, I will talk about overview of Turkish tax system and then current tax challenges of Turkish tax system, and then key developments in Turkish tax system. Overview of Turkish tax system, major taxes in Turkey. In Turkey, there is 3 types of tax types. First, the personal income taxes, income-based taxes, and consumption-based taxes, and third, wealth-based taxes. Personal income taxes are personal income tax and corporate income tax, and consumption-based taxes are value-added taxes, special consumption tax, custom duties, and stamp duty. And third, the wealth-based taxes are building and land tax, motor vehicle tax, and inheritance and gift tax. This is a chart shows tax structures in Turkey in terms of direct and indirect taxes over the years from 2015 to 2022. And here, indirect taxes, these are taxes imposed on goods and services rather than on income or profits. For example, value-added taxes. This data suggests that in Turkey, the indirect taxes have consistently contributed more to total tax revenue compared to direct taxes, but there have been some variations in the percentages of over the years. Yes, and here's countries are grouped by
Reyna Hanım selamlar, nasılsınız? Ben şimdi Guillermo, bugün
income
Profesör
tax
Guillermo Hoca ile
revenues from
beraber
the
orada
highest
çok
share
güzel
of total
şeyler
tax
yapıyor.
revenues, followed
Bizim
by those
Özgür Hukuk Araştırma Merkezi var ve
social
Bilişim
security
Enstitüsü var.
contributions or taxes on
Ben ikisinin de
and services
eş
from
müdürlüğünü
the
yapıyorum ve
highest share,
başkentleri
as you can see. And the weight of consumption taxes in Turkey is quite higher than the OECD average in Turkey. The structure of tax receipts in Turkey compared with the OECD average is shown in this figure. Relative to OECD average, the tax structure in Turkey is characterized by higher revenues from taxes on corporate income gains and social security contributions, value-added taxes, and goods and services, but a lower proportion of revenues from property taxes and substantially lower revenues from taxes on personal income, profits, and gains and no revenues from payroll taxes in Turkey. This chart shows us the Turkey's tax structure, tax to GDP ratio compared to OECD in 2023. Turkey ranked 36 out of 38 OECD countries in terms of the tax to GDP ratio in 2022. But in 2023, Turkey ranked as 34th in OECD countries. And the challenges of Turkish tax system. The fight against informality will be carried out with the effective participation of all parties by making more use of technological opportunities. Tax practices also will be developed to recognize the informality in digital activities and increase the attractiveness of the investment environment. In Turkey, there is a development plan, the 12th development plan, aims to implement a large number of policies and measures prepared to increase tax competitiveness by registering informal economic activities and to prevent tax losses, to ensure sustainable growth and economic stability, and to ensure a more fair distribution of social income. And Turkey, there is a need to take reformist steps for all taxes to increase employment, production, exports, productivity, and competitiveness. It's aimed to implement new tax practices that encourage voluntary tax compliance and to take measures to reduce tax avoidance and tax evasion by making better use of technological opportunities. The main of the tax policy will be to gradually reduce the public deficit and strengthen public financial sustainability, excluding expenditures for some earthquake and disaster risks. Potential growth will be increased by improving the business and investment environment and establishing a favorable structure for sustainable growth. And the main issue for the Turkish tax system is informality. And there is an action plan for the fight against the informal economy for the period 2023 and 2025 to prevent tax losses and evasion unregistered economic activities. And special attention will be paid to opportunities brought by green and digital transformation. In addition to determining tax losses caused by informal economy, studies are carried out to determine the revenue losses arising from informal economy. Thus, it's aimed to increase social welfare, ensure fair income distribution and economic stability, prevent unfair competition by improving other macroeconomic indicators, and increase the size of the formal economy. The monitoring and evaluation processes of the components and actions included in the action plan, fight against informal economy, research, risk analysis, evaluation, and coordination activities are carried out by utilizing new technological means to effectively fight against informal economy. In addition to identifying tax losses caused by the informal economy, studies are also conducted to measure the overall revenue losses arising from the unregistered economic activities. These studies aim to better understand the economic impact of informality and to develop more effective policies to reduce it. By addressing informal economy, the government seeks to increase social welfare, ensure a fairer distribution of income, and support economic stability. Reducing informality helps strengthen public finances and allows state provide better public services. The plan, the fight against informality, carried out with the effective participation of all parties. With the risk-based analysis projects, it's aimed to contribute to the prevention of tax losses, evasion, and informal economic activities, to increase the effectiveness of tax audits by introducing a risk-based approach, such as Kurgan, a newly introduced system in Turkish tax system. Kurgan is a data-driven risk analysis and monitoring platform developed by tax authority in Turkey. Another issue for the Turkish tax system is broadening tax base. Revisions should be made update to income, corporate and value-added tax laws, and tax procedure law to create a simple and easy to implement structure that supports broadening the tax base. Collection performance of public revenues should be improved and tax penalties should be revised to strengthen deterrence. Another issue, competitiveness and international taxation in Turkey. The main objective of business and investment environment reforms in Turkey is to provide a more competitive structure to the economy by carrying out transactions with the least number of documents in the shortest time and the lowest cost, to further strengthen bureaucratic and legal predictability, and to ensure that the country makes investment opportunities by benefiting more from qualified international direct investments. And in recent years, in designing tax policies, these issues appear to come to the fore, strengthening justice, equality, stability, and predictability in taxation, combating the current account deficit, supporting competitiveness in the economy, and in order to attract foreign direct investments to the country, the harmonization of our tax legislation with the system of EU, and tax competition emerging on a global scale are effective in shaping our current tax structure. And various growth-supporting tax policies are being developed in our country, and in this context, special groups such as regional tax incentive for investments, tax incentives in the field of R&D, tax incentives for employment and exports often apply sectoral and regional-oriented tax practices to both private and legal entities. It's aimed to create a tax policy that supports achieving economic and social goals, to develop policy alternatives for this, and to ensure that tax contributes to economic growth as an important instrument. Achieving a highly competitive production is also important for Turkish legislators. Another big issue for tax authorities in Turkey is digital economy. Digital economy presents unique challenges to traditional tax systems due to its borderless nature and the intangible nature of many digital goods and services. Many new legislations have been recently introduced by the EU in areas related to the digital economy. While these legislations aim to protect privacy or ensure competition, they might have direct or indirect effects on the functioning of a customs union, as well as Turkey-EU bilateral trade and value chains. Among these legislations are the ones that also determine the standards of products and services to be supplied to the EU market in terms of cybersecurity and artificial intelligence criteria, and that may fall within the context of technical legislation that Turkey has to align under customs union. One key challenge is the difficulty in determining the source of income for tax purposes, as digital businesses can operate and generate revenue from anywhere in the world. This raises questions about which jurisdiction has the right to tax these activities. The speed at which the digital economy evolves can outpace the development of tax regulations, leading to gaps in the tax system that may be exploited. These challenges require tax authorities to adapt their approaches and collaborate internationally to ensure that the digital economy is taxed fairly and effectively. And there are key developments in Turkish tax system because of these challenges. One of them is value-added tax. The presidential decree published in the 2023 has increased the VAT rates as follows. And there are standard VAT rates and reduced VAT rate, and new rates are applied as of 10 July 2023. And corporate tax rates also changed in 2023. And there are also additional taxes, the additional motor vehicle tax, for example, the new supplementary tax for corporate taxpayers also introduced, and high value residence tax. It means değerli konut vergisi. And also there are some new taxes, digital services tax in Turkish tax system also will introduced. And that's all for my part. Thank you for your listening.
Professor Slasher, thank you so much for your awesome presentation, telling us, summarizing like a basic concept of like the Turkish tax law system and including like the recent like the developments. Well, here's the thing, like the tax law is challenging like the everybody, including me, all the time, because there are always some updates. But my question is so humble: how do you guys like the observe what is going on every single day? You know, what is your like the strategy to keep you posted, update all the time about those amendments? Like for me, it's always complex. It's like very, I always get like this, like the lost if I want to see something, what was going on in the Turkish, like the taxation system, which is huge. So what is your strategy on that? How do you follow the news all the time? I don't know what to say.
I don't follow generally. I follow only my study areas, for example, but so it's hard for us also.
It is always also like a maybe great strategy to specialize even in the tax law in some areas, correct? Because of the hugeness of the taxation system, correct?
Exactly. You are
All right. Any question to the Professor Slasher today? Okay, so do you guys mind to turn on the cameras? I'm gonna take a picture for our social media accounts. Arthur, who else is online? Şeyma, are you there? Şeyma is gone.
Hocam, I'm
All
here.
right. No, Şeyma is not gone. She's my research assistant doing a fantastic job to operate, to organize the event. If you guys don't mind, we will take a picture, good pictures, or social media accounts. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And hopefully I'll see you guys next year on a new event for a new roundtable talk. Professor Avcı and Slasher and Cihangir, my friend, Şeyma, Arthur, enjoy the rest of your the night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.